So if you have an 8-year-old kid, 3-year-old, 12-year-old, they'll be young adults, be in their 20s and 30s. Over the next 20 years, high debt levels will lower the U.S.'s cumulative economic output by roughly $29 trillion. In other words, we're impoverishing ourselves. We're impoverishing the next generation and the generation after that. That's what we're giving them. By 2037, 25 years from now, the federal government will spend $2.7 trillion per year in interest payments alone, more than a quarter of our entire federal budget that year, greater than the total federal budget in 2003. By 2025, 13 years from now, mandatory health care spending, Social Security, and the interest costs will consume 100% of the revenues that the federal government takes in. Mandatory health care like Obamacare, Social Security, and interest. That's it. Oh, what about money for education? What about money for this? What about money for that? The Congressional Budget Office also warned that, quote, growing debt would increase the probability of a sudden fiscal crisis during which investors would lose confidence in the government's ability to manage its budget, and the government would thereby lose its ability to borrow at affordable rates. Quote, unquote. What are we doing to our children and our grandchildren? And 25% women in Ohio, by 25%, support this, according to the Washington Compost and CBS. The president's budget does not, contrary to his endless lies, pay down our debt, quote unquote. Instead, debt would increase to more than $25 trillion in 10 years under the president's plan. It's $16 trillion today. He adds over $9 trillion in 10 years. If we're lucky. Your kids. Those kids you take to soccer practice, Little League, swim team, your kids, who you would die for, who you would do anything for, we're destroying them. They have no idea. And we know who's pushing this. And we know who won't stop it. And yet in Ohio, according to the Washington Compost and CBS, Obama's leading among women over Romney by 25%. Want to hear something else? This you haven't heard. The U.S. debt per household, right now it's $138,000, is more than double what it is in Spain today, which is $64,000. Have you looked at the news today? I know it's hard, but every now and then, did you take a peek? They're rioting in Spain. Just like they were rioting in Greece. Just like they were rioting in Portugal. Just like they were rioting in Great Britain. Just like they're going to riot here if we don't put an end to this as soon as possible. Over just the next 5 years, U.S. debt per household is on course to jump another $40,000 in 5 years to $176,000, while Spain's is on course to increase by $20,000 to $84,000. You know where this data comes from? The International Monetary Fund, the IMF. Do you have $176,000? You better start saving. That doesn't even include off-budget items, like entitlements. Doesn't even include that, which is into the tens of trillions of dollars and will never be paid back. Let me be... You ladies out there So according to the Washington Compost and CBS, you ladies in Ohio and every other state, you adore Obama by a big margin, by a wide, wide margin. Really? If your husband were doing this to your children, what would you think? If your neighbor were doing this to your children, what would you think? If your baseball, soccer coach, swim coach were doing this to your children, what would you think? You'd be disgusted. You'd fight it. You'd protect your children. Well, all I can say is wake the hell up. Because your children are being threatened by the greatest political child abuser in modern American history.
Mark Levin.